Hey everyone, welcome to Aerobic AF. I'm Ken and this is Quinlan.
We're pumped you're here. This is your home for a casual, unfiltered look at the world of running and all things hybrid training.
If you're trying to level up, stay consistent, and still be a normal human being, you're in the right place.
Let's get into it. So last weekend, Ken and I were at a party and we were having really great conversation with one of our friends from the gym, Sylvia.
Shout out Sylvia.
She mentioned that when she first started running in her late teens, early 20s, that she never used a smartwatch. Like didn't use Garmin, didn't have Strava, none of these apps. And it really brought me back to when I first started running, which we've established was a long time ago, but early 2000s, I was just running track cross country, really going by feel. I had no idea what a pace was, what easy running was versus interval. Like you're just
Did you use
running.
any kind of watch? Like
No.
just a regular
None.
wristwatch?
Yeah, I think at
You
most
just had the
I would've-
coach with a stopwatch.
Yes, someone had a stopwatch. Wasn't me. I wasn't looking.
Did
I was just running.
Did they consult you about what was going on the
Nope.
stopwatch?
I think at most it was like, run these fast. But I'm like, I remember doing like
Pure
repeat
RPE
workouts.
training.
Yeah, and honestly, what I ended up doing when I ran with other people in training, I would just like run with a group and kind of lock into what they were doing. And that's how I gauged what my effort was. But I did not have a concept of certainly not pacing.
Okay, so what this conversation at the party got us thinking about was the role that technology plays now in training.
Yeah, because there's so many pros, obviously, to why we, leverage tech, and there's a lot of great benefits that come with it, but there's cons as well that we have to acknowledge. And sometimes getting wrapped up in the data, what your watch is telling you, it can be mentally destructive as well.
Are you addicted to the smartwatch data, or are you feeling you're being
Do I have
gaslit by
I
the
think
smartwatch data?
I used to feel gaslit all the time. My Garmin would tell me I was being unproductive, like every day. Every day, unproductive.
Did you ever consider that you actually were or might be being unproductive?
Maybe I was dogging it. Maybe I actually wasn't going pretty hard.
Introspection is
Losing
very important.
PRing my 5K, but Garmin says I'm unproductive.
My favorite is you'll run a time trial or run the exact race, and then the Garmin fitness estimate or the Strava estimate will be different
It's still wrong.
from the race that you
we
just
can
ran.
talk about the AI integrations.
We'll get there.
I had something happen to me this morning with the Strava AI. So I ran a long run, 22 kilometers. It's a pretty normal long run for me. I've also run marathons, and Strava said, you ran a record-breaking time and distance for yourself today. I was like, what? I'm like, I've certainly run further than 22K.
And faster
And
than
way
probably we're
faster.
running today.
Yeah, I'm like, well, thanks, Strava, but nope, super off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we put a lot into the tech and forget that we should be using, other factors to gauge how you're performing and what's going on.
Let's start here. I got my first smartwatch about 2 years ago. And
How did you pick what smartwatch you were gonna?
I mean, it was pretty simple. It was just,
Garmin.
Everybody in my
Has
circle
Garmin.
has a Garmin.
Yeah.
I was at the time training specifically for triathlon. I went to the pool.
Okay.
Everyone had a Garmin. It just seemed like that was the piece of tech which everybody in my circle had. So I went out to Best Buy and I bought myself a Garmin.
You just picked the weird one with a touch screen and now having...
Well, they all have touch screens now.
Mine doesn't.
Yeah, because yours is 5 years old. If you
No,
go
it's actually old. It's like 8 years old. I've had my Garmin for a long time.
Exactly.
They don't even make the model anymore.
So don't be surprised when you go to buy a new watch and a lot of them are touchscreen, because that's just the way the technology is now.
Yeah.
This is besides the point. We know that I've had issues-ish with my watch.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to get at is that when I first bought this watch, it revolutionized the way that I train.
Oh, how did you find it impacted you, like, positively?
In almost every way. It made me train smarter. It made me understand exactly where I was in my pacing. It made me understand timing-wise where I was in a way that I didn't understand before while I was running intervals.
You were using it as a tool to better your performance.
Yes, which is what it's intended to do.
Yeah.
And we'll get into a further discussion here later about whether or not this always has a positive impact. But I would like to say that when I was starting and I kind of first got this watch, I think it was completely net positive for me.
Okay.
What it was able to do for me. And I think sometimes we take that for granted when we're, swearing about the tech and its accuracy and the heart rate data and all this stuff.
In it. Like, if anyone is trying to train based on heart rate, like we know there's zone training for heart rate, and you're putting a lot in what the watch and the feedback is telling you, that's where it starts to get a little dicey, because it might not be as accurate as you think. And at HRM, like heart rate monitor, is probably the most accurate that you'll get when you're out there running. But that's where I think it's best to combine it with your RPE, because sometimes I think my heart rate data is like, it feels within the ballpark, but oftentimes it feels like a little off. Like, I think sometimes the watch, it's like called cadence lock. Like, it can just kind of lock into something that it's like lagging. It's like not actually what's representative of where you're at.
So what I'm hearing is that you use other metrics outside of just the objective data from the watch.
Yeah.
And you think
totally.
that is equally as important, if not more important, at certain points in time than just using whatever data the watch is spitting out, which at some times may or not be more accurate than at other times.
Yeah, I actually think that my training almost got a bit worse when I got the watch, to be honest. Like,
interesting.
I trained for my first marathon without a smartwatch. I used the Strava app on my phone, and I would just start it, and I would do all my runs without taking any breaks, because I didn't want to be constantly opening and shutting the app all the time.
Q hates taking breaks during runs, by the way.
I do.
That's one of your
that's
deepest
stuck with me.
pet peeves, I think, or one of your biggest icks, if
It
you
is.
will, is people making you stop when you're on a run.
No picnics on the run.
Yeah.
I like to get it done. And I mean, that's a whole other thing about the benefits that come with like a non-stopped run. But yeah, the best part about not having a watch was I was truly running by feel. Like, there was no option to look at the watch and make adjustments. I definitely got much faster with the watch, though, because to your point, you could dial in with your pacing, and like interval workouts were much easier to do with a watch. I wasn't really doing those pre-watch either. But the first time I ever wore a smartwatch was in the marathon.
Oof.
I decided, my dad had an Apple Watch, so I just took his and I used it for the marathon.
That's rough, I feel.
I don't know. All his metrics are now like probably so thrown off. Like, wow, what did you do today? But that's when I basically was like, okay, I absolutely need this for my next race. And it was a game changer for that. But I think that going back to why it's maybe more negatively impacted my training initially was because I was focused and I was obsessed with the numbers. I was so locked into what my watch was saying and not what my body was saying. And that trap got me for years.
So we can suggest that the pros, it does enable you to do zone-based training. So based off of your heart rate, if you want to be in zone 1, zone 2, they're doing intervals, and you're going to be more in the zone 4 or zone 5 range. Yeah. This sort of tech, especially the HRM, which stands for heart rate monitor, they come in arm straps, chest straps, whichever you prefer, feel more comfortable with. It allows you to track that a lot more accurately, so you can actually be getting the efforts in that you're trying to target. So that can be very useful. Load monitoring also helps you track the volume, the intensity, and your recovery. So that can be another benefit, but also at times can be detrimental, as you had pointed out, because if you get lost in the data or what your watch is saying, and you're not paying as much attention to where your body is at, it can really negatively affect your training.
I think you have to be honest with yourself about where you're at in your own maturity with running. Like really, when you're training, 80% of your week should be at an easy effort, like a low effort, more focused on the volume or time on feet versus a pace. But I was really bad at slowing down on my long runs, on my easy runs. I was running way too fast, and I think part of that was because I was trying to run
to appease the watch.
Yes, and I wanted to see on Strava the predicted fitness or projected fitness. It would go up when you had like higher heart rate, faster pacing. So I was almost just skewing my own runs to get this positive feedback from an app or my watch.
I think this is an important point as far as the prediction metrics that both Garmin use or Strava use. Like there have been times where these predictions were telling me my fitness was the worst. Like absolutely terrible.
And it doesn't like strength training or cross training really for that matter. Like if you aren't, and I don't know what the algorithm is, but I think it favors like compounding runs back to back.
Or biking, things that can track, it likes. So it likes seeing
even biking,
the speed
your heart rate's so much lower typically that I would see it decline practically over time when I was like spending so much time on the Peloton. Running is like the thing that it fixates on.
I was more specifically talking about outdoor cycling. Because what it seems to value is distance and speed and time. So if it sees that you're going 35 kilometers in an hour on a bike outside, it really likes that. Yeah. If it sees that you're running, 12 kilometers outside an hour, it really likes that.
Basically doing anything inside,
it hates it.
It's not very good. And it can, I think the other reason we want to talk about this, like it can be tough mentally to feel like you're putting in the work and doing all the right things and you're not seeing it kind of artificially from these apps or your watch. And I'll give them credit. Like I think everyone's doing their best. Like ultimately we want more data, more information to make informed decisions about our training and if it's working. But you kind of need to take it into your own hands and make sure that you are looking at it holistically and not just doing or going off of everything that the watch says.
We've definitely unpacked a lot of topics in this last little bit here, so I want to kind of narrow in a little bit more specifically. I think that there can be some false precision that happens here. The data can appear more exact and more accurate than it truly is.
Absolutely.
So we have to understand that this is not a perfect system, and although it can be a useful
with a grain
compass,
of salt.
it's not an exact roadmap.
Yeah, I think it's a helpful directional tool.
Yes. I also think one thing that these pieces of tech do not account for as much are the context in which workouts are happening. What I mean by that is that your body could be under a little bit more stress than it normally is because of poor rest or whatever. It could be heat, could be altitude, could be a technique adjustment that you're making, or, for example, just doing a general cardio exercise in the gym. The watch doesn't exactly know what you're doing. So it's seeing that you're having all these high heart rates or that your effort is super high, but it doesn't have the exact context of the workout or what you're trying to accomplish with the workout, which can skew the way that it reads and then manufactures the data.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, kind of the meta point being don't put everything on the watch. Like you should be really paying attention to all these other pieces of the puzzle to make good decisions about your training and honestly to have confidence that your training is going well. We've talked about this before, but I think it kind of comes down to trusting the process. And as humans, we want to predict everything. Like you want to know how fast you're going to race the next race you do. You want to know that the training you're doing is like directly impacting that race result that you're, building towards. But having the trust that things are working as they're supposed to, even if you're getting like, incorrect data reads from the watch or from these fitness apps, that's where like the maturity comes in, I think, and having just a little bit more control overall about your training and not just relying on a watch to tell you everything.
I think that for the average athlete as well, the majority of the data points that are being spit out by this watch are not as relevant as we put stake into them for. Like, for example, the metric VO2 max. Everybody talks about this all the time in our circle to a point where it seems like they are obsessed. I'm not even joking. It's like this metric is the gold standard. And everybody looks at their VO2 max and says, mine is higher, so that means I'm more fit than you.
Yep.
I don't think that the watch is the most accurate depictor of what the VO2 max is. If you really want that, you have to go to a lab. You have to strap up the big rig to your mouth and run it on a treadmill in a controlled environment if you're actually wondering what that is. Second off, there are a lot of things that go into what your fitness is, not the least of which is the efficiency in which your body is metabolizing and using the oxygen that's available to it.
And you know how you get more efficient?
How's that?
Running easy.
Easy runs.
Yeah.
But the point being is that the VO2 max are these metrics that people become very infatuated by, that are metrics that kind of dictate or are supposed to gauge where you're at fitness-wise, are not the be-all, end-all. And actually, there are a lot of other factors that the watch can't measure that are also good indicators of where your fitness is at.
You know what I'm a really big fan of? This kind of goes hand in hand with that, because I'm a big fan of time trials and like having these check-in races or opportunities to actually measure where you're at, because looking at the data from your watch is going to give you this false sense, in some instances, false sense of like progress in your fitness. But if you take the time to run a 5K race like every 4 to 6 weeks, that will be the single best way to track how you're doing. Hot take maybe, but I would choose that over any metric my watch spit out.
No, it's a real world quantitative objective data. That like makes more sense.
It's like as humans, we try to find shortcuts all the time, and looking at these little data points on a chart makes you feel good. And sometimes it is positive, and that is coming back to the point of it being directional. But I think overall, it's making sure that you are, making good decisions about your training and actually tracking progress in a meaningful way.
And I think that you touched on something important there. It's real world results versus training by an algorithm.
Oh yeah, real world results are the best because it takes into account so many factors, and it also gives you an opportunity to practice more of like a race day mindset and mentality. And I think it's just going to do a lot more for you overall.
I think another thing that can be discouraging when using technology to dictate where you're at fitness-wise is sometimes different athletes can do the same workout and get different scores. Like, for example, you could run the exact same workout as your friends, like exact intervals, exact everything, and they'll get back different data from the watch that says, wow, that workout was super effective for you and it's improving fitness and it's this, whereas for you, it could come back and say, you're maintaining or you're actually losing fitness. And that can be very discouraging when you're looking at the comparison and you're sitting there thinking, I did the same workout as this person. How come they're getting all these great metrics and their 5K score is dropping and mine is saying that I'm losing fitness? So I think that can be discouraging in that way as well if you're using it as a direct comparison.
Absolutely. And, we've talked a bit about like the training smartwatches, but there's also like the wearables such as Oura Ring, Whoop, and these are, really geared towards recovery and getting more insights on things like HRV, sleep, and they're made to be worn 24/7. I think that's another important thing to remember. If you are only putting your Garmin or watch on to do a run, I wouldn't even bother looking at any of the metrics, because most of the data, it comes from overnight. Like, you need to be wearing it when you sleep and all day long, because it's tracking how your body is responding to different life stress and elements that are outside of just the run you did that morning. So something that I find helpful about Whoop specifically, because I have Whoop, is it will give me insights into my sleep. And so I know going into a workout, I'm like, you know what? I didn't get a very good sleep last night, so this actually might be unproductive. This might not be good. And it can just empower you to set up expectations for yourself and what you're going to do. I think that's a positive way that you can use some of these tools.
We both use Whoop as a metric. I think it can be very useful in your recovery. Again, I feel like I'm just going to be playing devil's advocate here for sake of this podcast and for interesting discussion. No, I do think that sometimes it can be counterproductive in that way as well, because you end up chasing metrics that sometimes are not as attainable. Like, for example, chasing a green recovery score on Whoop is very difficult if you're training at a high level. It really values getting consistent sleep, getting a certain amount of time of sleep. If the times are ever screwed up, it really lowers your recovery score.
Yeah, you don't want to be chasing the numbers. I think that's an important piece. Like, maybe if you've had like a week in a row where your sleep has been bad, you probably should dial into that a little bit more, but not making every decision just to appease the watch or like what you're seeing in the data. I also would not recommend looking at it the morning of a race, because I think that can kind of mess with you mentally. Imagine opening up your Whoop app and it's like, you're in the red zone and you have to go race a 10K that morning. Like, that would suck. I've also had cases where like I wake up, my recovery is pretty low, and then I end up performing really well. So that also speaks to the fact that it's not always super accurate. And it doesn't mean you're going to have a bad performance day just because you had a bad sleep or your body temperature is a bit higher than normal. Like, there's so many other things that go into it.
One aspect of tech, and it kind of ropes into discussions we've had in the past, but it's the social aspect of it that's now very relevant now. When I upload to Garmin, it uploads my workout into that platform and then immediately posts it on Strava. When I go on Strava...
Do you hide your heart rate data? Some people hide their heart rate data.
No, I'm not afraid.
And you know what? Everyone should do what they want to do, but I do find that interesting.
Yeah, because the heart rate data definitely correlates. It correlates with usually effort to your fitness.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're doing an easy run and you're running a 450 pace...
Your heart rate's like 160. I mean, that's maybe a you problem to dive into that. But
then maybe that's not an easy run and you need to unpack that. But this is to the point, is that there is a social pressure aspect to it where you can feel that maybe your fitness isn't good enough, or you're hiding information to make the perception that you're more fit than you are, or you can even compare your fitness to other people who are on the app. I've been guilty of this in the past. I think that comparison is the thief of joy, as we've spoken about. But sometimes I'll have a workout and I'll be like, I crushed that thing. That was awesome. And then I go on the app and I see that somebody else ran 5K further at a lower heart rate. And you just feel that sinking feeling immediately
You
in
know
your
what
heart.
has helped me?
What's that?
Well, when we go on runs together, now we've
You
established.
hide your heart rate?
No, no. Now we've established that your heart rate is around. It's always around what 10 to 15
Lower usually.
beats per minute
Yeah.
lower. So, let's say if we're doing an easy run, I'll be at 140. You're at 125. I think I could easily read into that and be like, "Oh my God, we just did the same thing. Why is his heart rate lower?" But sometimes you're having having a hard day. You're on the struggle bus, and your heart rate's lower than mine. I'm like, you know what? This is fine. I'm like, heart rate, whatever. There's a lot of other things happening, but it just
Context is important.
Yeah, context is important, and also just not comparing, because you don't want to come out of every training session feeling bad about what you did, and it's all so individualized that better to just not compare.
I also think that the data analysis or the way that we crunch data as more amateur athletes is also significantly less than a lot of the professionals do. Like, it seems like they're more geared into, as we've talked about RPE, the rate of preserved exertion, how their body's feeling. They're more attuned into that rather than getting bogged down in just
On the day-to-day.
just raw numbers, or the numbers fluctuating between an easier run or a hard effort. They don't really get stuck in that. They kind of know where they're at, and they train specifically in the zones that they feel in their bodies. And it's more
critical
just
to performance
Yeah.
to be focused on that over the data. Would you ever do like a watch list Wednesday? That's a thing.
What's Watch List Wednesday?
You go on an easy run and you leave your watch at home.
I think that it can be useful at times. I mean, for me, I do like having some sort of accurate representation about where my volume's at. I know that you can go in and add it later. For me, I do like having the pacing, and I do like having that kind of data available for me. But I find myself now way less inclined to be worrying about like the raw data from the run. Like, I'm not concerned about where the pacing's at or where the heart rate's at really as much anymore.
You want it for training volume.
Yes, is specifically where I use it for, and I think that's very useful for that.
I used to do the watch list Wednesday thing, but as I mentioned, this was because I was finding myself to be very addicted and wrapped up in the numbers and focused so much on like the pacing that I would leave my watch at home, and I knew the distance I was running. Like, I would just go on a normal run. Recently, I always wear my watch running. Sometimes I'll change the data points like on the face so that I don't see pace. I just see like time or distance. I think that can be really helpful just to like get out of like looking down and being concerned about that. But I think that's a helpful tool as well for anyone who wants to run slower, but their ego is having a tough time with it.
What metrics do you think matter the most for like the average athlete?
I think you should use heart rate directionally.
I agree.
I don't think you need to completely ignore what your watch says. I think it can actually give you a lot of valuable feedback, good and bad, however you want to interpret it. And so that's definitely one thing. And then I think, just overall volume. And that's where the watch is helpful. You just track not only running, but your strength training, cross training, and you see where you net out like every week. But looking at it like a 7-day rolling period is probably more valuable than just a specific Monday through Sunday on Strava, because your week, you might end up doing a lot in a 7-day period, but not even realizing it if you're only looking at Monday to Sunday. So that's one thing I'll flag. But those, I think, would be the two most important.
I agree. I think that heart rate is important. I think that training in the proper zone is important. So you can easily flag if your easy runs are costing you a little bit more, which is just going to cost you simply on recovery. If you're recovering better, then you're going to be available to train more. So I do think that the heart rate is important. Now, on a micro level, if it's a little bit higher for one effort of the week or a couple efforts of the week, I wouldn't be as concerned about that as the overall trend, which is kind of what we're steering towards, is that yes, the data is useful. Don't worry about it. If one effort feels a little bit harder on a certain day than another day, that's all good. Because I do think that also training by the RPE is equally as important on certain runs because of the factors that the watch can't understand. If it's too hot, it's going to feel harder. You have to drop your pace.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good segue into like not zoning in on these very specific, like maybe a single day spike or single session spike because of these other factors. But what it really is helpful with is trends, seeing trends over time. Like the VO2 max score that your watch says might not be accurate, but the trend that it shows either getting higher or lower over like a 4 to 6 month period is probably what you'd be most wanting to look at and track.
Yeah, so trends over more specific data points. We both agree that that's more important.
Yeah, because it kind of goes back to being consistent, and you can see zooming out versus like looking at like the day-to-day stuff.
If you had to ditch your watch for 30 days, what do you think would improve, or on the flip side, what do you think would regress?
I actually think a lot would improve, to be honest. I've thought about this, and I do think my watch controls me a little bit. I want to post on Strava. I want to see what's going on with my pacing. I want the feedback. When I do an interval workout and I see my pacing, it gives me a lot of confidence that I'm doing what I need to be doing. I think I would really need to relinquish control and go back into trusting the process on like a wholehearted level. So things that would change, I'd probably actually run threshold efforts at threshold. I'd run way easier. And I would take rest days when I felt I needed them. And I just think overall I'd be much more in tune with my body. So maybe I'll do that one month.
I think that my volume would suffer for sure. I do. Okay. I think that it's important for me to have the metrics in front of me that I understand. This is the distance that I want to hit this week. This is kind of what I'm looking for. I know that I could just write it down on a piece of paper. I'm probably not going to do that to track that. If I didn't have the watch just makes it easier for that. Mm-hmm. I do think as well that training very specific zones, as we've talked about, is something that we try to do quite often. Yeah. I think that I would be more likely to probably go easier on the intervals or on the harder days if I didn't have the watch. Like sometimes I can gauge where I'm at in the workout by just seeing where my heart rate is. And sometimes I'm okay with it being a little bit lower. Sometimes, for example, for a longer run interval, the other day we were doing an interval on the treadmill, my doubles partner Max and we did 6 by 1200. We were kind of trying to hold 342 to 345 pace for those intervals.
Yeah.
The heart rate data was important for me there because when it started getting up higher towards the end of the 6th rep, I knew that was where I needed to pull the plug on the workout, and I didn't need the 7th rep anymore. Because on the last rep, I was getting into the 184, 185 range, which is too high. Rule. Yeah.
1 rep always should be left in the tank.
Which is why I pulled the plug at 7. Because there was another rep there. I could have kept pushing. I could have done 8 probably. But when I saw the reflection of the heart rate data, I knew that my body was pushed to the max for that day, and that was where I needed to stop. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, the data, the real-time data, and watching it kind of climb up a little bit, 2 or 3 beats per minute on each rep, allowed me to understand where my body was at physiologically in that workout and stop it actually at an appropriate time rather than pushing for that 7th rep, which I could have done, but it wasn't necessary on that day.
I think, just for anyone using or not using a smartwatch, it's important to understand where it benefits you and where it hurts you. So you can really benefit from the tech when you need it, but not let it hinder in all these other ways. So it really comes down to what works for you personally. I would recommend that everyone try an easy run without your watch and see what happens, see how you feel. Maybe you feel more anxiety because you're not tracking it, and that is going to obviously be negative for your training, so you probably should just keep the watch on. But you also might find that it gives you this sense of freedom and you feel really good. So I would say it's up to you and how you want to use the watch, like, to your advantage. But use it as a tool. Like, it doesn't need to be there all the time.
I like this analogy. I think that it should be used more as a compass rather than the actual physical map. Mm-hmm. It could give you some idea of direction, and with conjunction, when used in conjunction with other tools and other metrics, it can really help you get to where you want to go in an effective way. But it's not be all end all the time. You just have to use it, as you said, as a tool, and understand the way that the metrics, or the way that the data, how you kind of consume the data and understand the data, and how you use that to effectively monitor your training, rather than just saying, this is what the watch says and taking it for 100% face value.
Yeah, always take it with a grain of salt for sure. The one thing I'll add as well, this is something I do in races, is I have a very specific watch face that only shows time and distance and not pace. And I switch to that around the halfway point of a marathon, sometimes in a half if I think about it. And the reason I do that is because I don't want the feedback negative or positive. Like, at that point in the race, I'm like trying to run really fast and hold it. And I don't want the watch to tell me that I'm running slower than I think. And also on the flip side, I don't want to slow down because I think I'm going too fast.
You want to feel how your body's feeling. If you're feeling like you can push a little bit more, you can push.
Yeah, and I remember I did that in 2022 when I ran the Toronto Marathon. This was around 35K. I was really hurting, and I just turned my watch off. And I thought that I was running so much slower than I was. And when I looked back at the watch after the race, I was like, wow, thank God I just didn't know what was happening, because I think it would have really negatively affected my result. Actually, one of my favorite professional runners, Sarah Hall, I think she did this in the Houston half before she set the record. She threw her watch off. She was like, I don't want this thing to ruin my goals. And I think she said something about the watch disturbing her peace and stealing that moment from her. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. I don't know if I'd be able to take it off fully unless I had a friend out there. But I think the main takeaway is that you don't need the watch all the time. And again, coming back to just being honest with yourself of where it helps and hurts you is the best way to leverage it.
Yeah. Be honest with yourself. Use the data for what it is, but don't get bogged down.
Yeah, and let's see if the Strava AI starts to improve anytime soon.
The Strava AI told me that my 7-second recovery run the other day that accidentally got logged was a very effective recovery tool.
That was hilarious. That was so funny.
Yeah, so by the way, this is just kind of a good idea of the limitations of tech.
So well.
I'm doing the most out here. 7 seconds.
Love that.
7 seconds of my week. All right, well, got anything else to add?
No, I mean, I think I'm going to keep using my Garmin as I have for the last 8 years. It works great. I think this is actually a really good kind of a reminder that you don't need the watch data to tell you that you're doing a good job. You should be able to kind of put that together yourself.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, thanks.
Right.
Thanks for listening to this episode.
Yeah,
if you have a friend who's got bogged down in the tech, who's getting lost on Strava.
If someone's obsessed with the data, look at their screen time. If their screen time is over, a couple hours on Strava per week, check on them.
Yeah.
They might be SOS.
Send a quick check-in text. And share this episode with your friends, your family, anyone who's looking to get into fitness. We appreciate the support. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, and until next time,
stay aerobic AF.